Broke down the wide receiver position from a PPR standpoint is our clear number one, tier by himself, Antonio Brown. The last 4 years, he's led all fantasy receivers in fantasy points.
The last 4 years?
4 years, he's led all receivers. He stands alone as the big number one. Number two, I have Hopkins, Odell Beckham, and Julio Jones all together. Jack, agree or disagree?
Yeah, I can't not agree with that. So I really like DeAndre Hopkins. He's just an insane athlete. When you look at him, he doesn't look like anything special really, but he is just ridiculous. I know you've seen that clip of him in that scrimmage against the Redskins, right? And that DB is just talking smack to him. The next play does a little go route, literally snaps this dude's ankle.
Absolutely put him out. I believe that was on Hard Knocks a couple years ago.
Yep.
Really liked it. I just think with a quarterback like Deshaun Jackson, who throws a touchdown every 9 throws, he's just going to get a ton of targets, tons of touchdowns. Odell Beckham, same thing. Explosive offense, tons of targets. I am kind of scared about Eli Manning and his age and only having one football on the field, but I kind of mix him in with Julio Jones. How do you distinguish those two guys apart from each other?
I mean, ODB, we've all seen what he can do. He's just an amazing athlete, just like DeAndre Hopkins. ODB's got a little bit of edge on DeAndre. Julio Jones is just one of those guys that you can't cover. We talked about it last week. Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones, very, very similar wide receivers. If I had to choose between those three, I don't know, man. I'd probably have to go with Julio Jones.
I'll take Julio Jones too. He has the most receiving yards per game ever in the history of the NFL for his career. He's just a stud athlete. I also think some touchdown regression positively for him is incoming. He only had 4 touchdowns last season. Tier 3, I have 2 guys by themselves. I almost consider them as a part of tier number 2. We're going to put them by themselves, though. Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen. You got anything to say about those guys?
Just 2 in tier 3, huh? Well, I love Keenan Allen. He is a great player. He was on Cal, tore his ACL, dropped down in the draft. Chargers stole him, and he's just been nothing but amazing for them over there. Michael Thomas, he connects with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a top quarterback in the NFL, so you got to love having Drew Brees there passing to Michael Thomas. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably take Keenan Allen. I may be a little biased because I am from San Diego, but I do have to say I would rather take Keenan Allen over Michael Thomas. Brent, you got anything on tier 3, or are we gonna move down?
Yeah, I will say Keenan Allen does beat Michael Thomas in my book if he stays healthy the entire season. Tier 4, really I made tier 4 kind of a stay away tier for myself. AJ Green, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton. All of those guys, they're not on very good teams, aside from Devontae Adams, who's on a great team. AJ Green, Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, all those guys could finish on the bottom halves of their divisions as far as their teams go. Bad teams do not equal good fantasy points. Yes, you're down in games, but if you're bad and you don't score points, you don't score fantasy points. It's easy as that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you only on T.Y. Hilton there. T.Y. Hilton, I had him on my team 2 years ago, and then I know Andrew Luck was out last year, so I stayed away from him in the draft. But now Andrew Luck's going to be back. T.Y. Hilton, even last year, went off. Didn't necessarily get as high as he could have, obviously, with Andrew Luck. But now Andrew Luck's going to be back, and T.Y. Hilton's one of those long ball guys where he'll catch you 5-6 receptions for 150 yards. So I really like T.Y. Hilton. Other than that, A.J. Green, Andy Dalton is nothing special.
Just a bad team. A lot of unproven weapons.
Devontae Adams could get 9 targets in one game, and he could get 0 targets for the next 3 games. It all depends on who's open and who Aaron Rodgers really trusts. And then Mike Evans, I talked about this in previous podcasts. Jameis Winston is not a franchise quarterback, so I wouldn't take him. No way.
And he's not going to have him for 4 games. So we got a backup quarterback for 4 games to start the season. I think all those guys are stayaways. Lastly, I got tiers 5 and 6. But what 5 and 6 are just a bunch of guys that really nobody has the answer to. Guys like Adam Thielen, Larry Fitzgerald, Doug Baldwin, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper. A bunch of names like that we're going to have to wait and see, but you got to draft somebody. So who stands out in that list, Jack? Somebody quick, a couple of thoughts. What do you got?
Adam Thielen. I really like Adam Thielen. I think he could go third round. Adam Thielen is one of those guys that gets overlooked because he's white. If he wasn't white, he would definitely be ranked in probably I'd say maybe tier 3.
Wow.
He was an absolute monster last year, and his quarterback was Case Keenum. So he's got Kirk Cousins this year. I think they won't be as dynamic as an offense, but I think Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen are going to link up a lot. So I really like Adam Thielen. I think he might drop a little, but I would jump on him right away if you could get him in round 3 or round 4.
I'm going to disagree there. Between Thielen and Diggs on the same team, same quarterback, I think Thielen drops down below Diggs just because Diggs is more athletic. If he stays healthy all season, he could take any ball of the house. And I think we saw it to end the playoff game last season. Respectively disagree, of course. I'm going to take Diggs over Thielen. But hey, I'm going to counter you with another question. Tyreek Hill or Amari Cooper? Pick one. 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm going Tyreek Hill. Amari Cooper had a great rookie season last year. Didn't really show up. I was really surprised. The Raiders were just absolutely ridiculous 2 years ago, and then they took a nosedive last year. And Amari Cooper did not show up at all. So I would way rather take Tyreek Hill. They do have a new quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, but Tyreek Hill is definitely my choice over Amari Cooper. What about you?
I think Tyreek Hill is going to be an extreme deep threat this season, and if Patrick Mahomes stays consistent, so will he. But Amari Cooper's an elite receiver. He came out of college, and some guys were saying he looked like an NFL veteran in practice, in minicamp. He just had a tough end of the season last year. I know they tried to work him into the red zone scheme a lot last year to start the season, and it started off not so hot. A couple of drops week 1 against the Titans took him right out of that rotation. So I think because of a bad start last year, he got a negative rep for his whole career, and that's wrong. So I'm going to take Amari Cooper over Tyreek Hill. Anybody else in that range that you might want to talk about before we go down to tier number 6?
I see on your paper you have Josh Gordon and Juju Smith. Josh Gordon, to me, is a wide receiver, at least a wide receiver 3. I think he's starting on a fantasy lineup, to be honest. Whether that's in the wide receiver 2 spot or the flex spot, Josh Gordon, I think, is going to be starting in 85% of fantasy lineups this year. Remember a few years ago, he missed 2 games, and he led the NFL in receiving yards. Like, that is ridiculous. The dude was so out of it, and he's just such a physical specimen. I mean, you guys probably have seen the Hard Knocks episodes. He just came back. He's looking like he's something to be fucked with. That's for damn sure.
I am very excited to watch and see how he kind of moves into his role under a good explosive Browns offense. I think Jarvis Landry kind of takes away from that a little bit because he demands the ball. He demands bubble screens. He demands a lot of throws his way. So it's going to play against what Josh Gordon does, but hey, he's still a big guy. Throw to him down the field a lot. Before we go to tier 6, I will say that there are some guys that just missed it that are going to be at the top of tier 6, and it's going to be Chris Hogan and Sammy Watkins. Those guys were kind of on the borderline. Do you think they're 5 or 6 material, Jack?
I'd say they're both 5 material, to be completely honest with you. Chris Hogan's going to be looking at a lot of targets in the first four weeks. Edelman out on the PED suspension. And Sammy Watkins, I mean, he just went to a new team, right?
Yeah, he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a big-time threat. I do see him as only a long ball guy, though. Obviously, Mahomes has a gun, but if you're primarily just a long ball guy, you're not going to get the catches. And I'm a PPR nut. I want the catches.
Yeah, receptions are huge. in PPR. Sammy Watkins, you mentioned the deep ball, which I agree with, but you also got Tyreek Hill. And if someone's going deep, Tyreek is going to be the number one. Sammy Watkins is going to be the secondary look on that one. But I definitely agree. But then we got some true number 6 or tier 6 guys. What do we got?
Alshon Jeffries, Michael Crabtree, Robert Woods. Now, he's down at tier 6. I love Robert Woods this year. He is the Rams' number 1 receiver. Brandon Cooks, just because he signed the long contract and the big money contract, does not mean he's a number 1 guy. He's a slot guy. He's never been a 1 guy. He's never stayed with the team longer than a year. I just don't see that along with Cooper Kupp working out. I think they're both kind of the same guy. So Woods is their 1, but he's down at a tier 6 because of Cooks and Kupp being there, taking away targets. If you had Kupp, Cooks, Woods, who are you taking and in what order?
Kupp, Cooks, Woods. Say that 3 times fast. I'm taking Cooks. Brandon Cooks, you said that just because he got the contract doesn't mean that he's the number 1 there. I totally agree, but I saw clips of Sean McVay at training camp the first day when he saw Cooks running routes, and Sean McVay was rocking a little half chub in his trousers. So I think Cooks is the guy there.
All right, we're gonna go Woods, Cooks, Kupp in my book. Let's just slide there. Lastly, do you have anything to say about Funches, Nelson? We didn't speak about Alshon Jeffries. Anybody to round out the bottom of this order? Maybe a Corey Davis?
I mean, Jordy Nelson is a great receiver. You saw him in Green Bay. The only thing is I don't know how great that offense is going to be. Derek Carr showed us what he can do. He also showed us what he can't do. So Jordy Nelson, I think, is going to be a good pickup. He will slide down pretty low, but he's another deep ball guy, kind of like T.Y. Hilton, where you're going to get 5 receptions, 6 receptions for 100, 150 yards.
It does scare me, though. John Gruden's taken the Oakland Raiders to like 1979 or whatever the hell he's doing. So they could run the ball every single down, and that doesn't make for good football. So I'm going to stay away from Jordy Nelson in my drafts because I just don't know where his upside sits. I mean, he will be a red zone threat and a deep ball guy that we're talking about, but only once a game, twice a game. So my book, no. Jack's book, yes. You guys making your own decision on that.
All right, so to round this whole thing up, Brent, what are we going for?
So I think the goal this year in wide receiver is you got to get a guy, either Antonio Brown, obviously, but you got to get a guy in tiers 2 and 3. That's Hopkins, ODB, Julio, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen. Maybe even fall down if you like AJ Green or you like a Devontae Adams. You got to get one of those guys and as many 5 and 6 guys that we spoke on late. I just think that gives you enough floor week to week to get catches, touchdowns. Anything to say about that, Jack?
No, that's a great strategy. I agree with that as well. You got to get those top guys because they're the guys. Basically, I heard a stat from Matthew Berry that aside from the defense and the kicker of your fantasy lineup, your first 2 picks account for 31% of your weekly scoring. So keep that in mind because these picks matter.